All right, off we go. So I'm sort of going to repeat what I said 2 days ago, except I'm going to do it slower. But not too slow because I have to catch a plane pretty soon after the conference. So a few things about the UAS, sort of for my personal entertainment, and I'm sure I've shown this before. So the UAS started in 2014 at USC, but there were earlier cases of probability-based panels that I've been involved in. One of them was the center panel in the Netherlands, which we started in 1996, but actually it's the predecessor that was even earlier. We started in the 80s, and it wasn't really an internet panel because the internet had not been invented yet, but it was a system where people had a modem at home and they would answer questions once every weekend. So I think conceptually, I think that's sort of the start of internet panels in some ways. I moved to RAND. At RAND, we started the American Life panel. Some of us here have been involved from the very beginning, particularly Tanya. Well, it's just you and I think. Everyone else is like buses in South Africa, some other place, yeah. Then in 2007, I was involved in the start of what's called the LIST panel in the Netherlands. We got a big grant, and the LIST panel is sort of similar to the UAS in many ways, and I'll sort of probably reference that once or twice. I think I did this also last time. Okay, it's just a little bit sort of obvious about the way we collect the data. It's really very standard. We use postal addresses. Of course, one of the things everyone is doing, right? I think that's the great thing about this conference, is that everyone is busy with figuring out what works, what doesn't, can we do things better or not, and we certainly try to be active, and we have an endless number of experiments where we try to improve response rates, recruiting rates. The common denominator for all these experiments is they pretty much all fail, but that's at least you have tried, and I think that's sort of, if you sort of think of the things that are being presented here, that's often also the case, right? We have seen quite a few null results, but I think that's a good thing because we share with each other the things that don't work, and then we try to learn from the things that seem to work. One of the things that we do quite a bit in the UAS is that we do quite a few experiments for all sort of other things. For example, we have looked at ways in which information provision would, for example, change people's plans for when to claim Social Security. So we do hypothetical experiments, and since it's all on the internet, it's all computerized, you can randomize until you're blue in the face. So we do this quite a bit, and these experiments, of course, the data are all available. And of course, the other thing is, we really try to cover the whole population, which of course everyone's trying to do. And one of the things we have done from the beginning, also back in the American Life panel at RAND, is provide internet for people who don't have it. And I think as today's talk also made clear, increasingly that doesn't really matter that much. We still do that, but the number of people who really need internet and who don't have it is really quite small, because many people at the very least will have a smartphone. So what really matters is indeed the way you select the panel members, and I think Andrew did a great job in motivating that just an hour ago. So of course, I'm going to compare the UAS to two other typical survey types, just to set the stage. The first is, clearly we're not the only probability-based internet survey. And I think the difference with most probability-based internet surveys in this country certainly is that they're panels, they're probability-based, but they really don't concentrate on longitudinal data collection. There may be sort of short panels that they run for a particular client. So it's really a platform for collecting high quality data. Whereas what we're doing, we're really trying to collect consistently a lot of longitudinal data, and we then repeat it every 2 years. And the only other panel in the world, as far as I know, that does that is the LIST panel, the one that I was involved in the Netherlands. So in that sense, I think the UAS, even though it's a probability-based internet panel, it really in many ways is similar to the sort of high quality traditional longitudinal population surveys, but of course there are also differences. And so how does the UAS compare to, for example, HRS or PSID? And I think you can characterize it very simply. we collect a lot more data than any of these other surveys. But the recruiting rate is much lower. So it's a much smaller percent of the target sample that we actually get into the panel than you get in the, what I call the traditional panel. So on the one hand, you collect more data. On the other hand, you can worry about it because, we have lower recruiting rates. And of course, that's one of the things, once again, that Andrew also talked about. And it seems as if it doesn't really matter that much, but of course, you never quite know. So you're always a little worried about it. So to sort of elaborate on this a little bit, the reason why the recruiting rate is lower is, well, so first of all, we collect more data because the internet sort of makes that possible, right? We give people relatively short surveys, never more than half an hour, but usually more like 50 minutes. But you can do this every week if you like. So, and if it adds up, so at the end of the day, you can collect a lot more data than in surveys that have like one extensive interview once every 2 years. That's sort of the upside. That's, how do I go? Right, so on the other hand, so the downside is that since we don't do face-to-face interview or any other way of contacting people except sending them letters, the recruiting rate is simply lower because we don't use as intensive methods as the other surveys use. So that's the trade-off that we have made. And I wouldn't mind using all the other intensive methods, except that would double the cost of recruiting easily. So that's the choice we have made in what we do. Content, just very briefly, and of course, that's sort of the topic in some ways that we'll talk about during the session is we do the complete HRS instrument every 2 years. So pretty much the core content is all on a 2-year basis, similar to what PSID does, what HRS does. So we sort of follow, if you like, common practice, not necessarily best practice, but common practice. But then in addition, we have information on personality, the big 5. We have life satisfaction, you have neighborhood quality that we elicit. We have by now a lot of cognition tests. I think we have now 10 different cognition tests, which is sort of makes sense given that part of it is aging focused, and our support comes from the Social Security Administration and NIA, and of course they have an interest in aging and cognition. Cognition is a big part of what we're doing. Then Social Security knowledge is sort of unique, and I guess it sort of illustrates, the role of one of our major sponsors. So we do quite a bit of work on eliciting what people know about Social Security, when they can claim, what the rules are, where they get their information, things like that. So that's sort of a unique aspect, and all of that is available. Recently, over the last couple of years, we have started a specific disability survey, which is another unique aspect, I think, that I don't think you see in other major population surveys. Then we have modules on financial services, decision-making, financial health, partly because of work with others, like the Financial Health Network we have worked with for quite a few years, and they commission a survey every year, so that then gives us a lot of information on financial health, which then of course also can be related to other things that people are doing. And as I said, like 2 days ago, or yesterday actually, since we concentrate on the evolution of inequality and health disparities over the life course, one of the things that's very important is life history, which we don't have yet. I mean, we're developing that, but that's what I think it's going to be one of the major efforts to develop that and have life history information for everyone. And then, of course, there's non-survey data, so we have contextual data. Pretty much anything we can think of, you can link to people based on their geography. Partly it's already there, partly we're linking it and collecting all the data. There's paradata, we do quite a bit of work on, particularly the relation between response behavior and how quickly people answer, etc., and the relation with that with cognition, because it turns out to be quite predictive of what you then measure in the cognitive tests that people take. We do a fair bit of work with wearables, particularly at this moment, activity tracking and air quality, and whenever there is another interesting aspect you can measure with wearables, then certainly we'll do that too. And then we do behavioral experiments, I already mentioned that. And what's forthcoming is we're going to genotype the UAS respondents. We're at the early stage of that project, but that's another 5-year project. So gradually we'll do that for the whole panel, and then of course those data will be available in the form of indexes. And then the other point, of course, I guess which is relevant here is that we really try to make data available as quickly as we can. So often when data come out of the field, it's posted right away, and people and the user can then download it and analyze it. So our philosophy is really that data has to be available, because what's the point of collecting it if people then don't have an opportunity to use it? So this without delay, as I write here. We also have, it's still in development, but we're developing a dashboard so that you can sort of access the data without needing any software package. You can sort of make tables or graphs just based on what's in there. Data access is, and I think there will be a presentation about this, has sort of different levels. I mean, the non-identifiable part, if you like, the public data, that's very easy. You sign a DUA and you get the data. But then if it becomes more sensitive, then you have to jump through more hoops. And there's also an enclave where we have the most sensitive data. We try to be transparent, so our website is probably overloaded with details. So there's enormous amount of stuff there about everything we do and the response rates and things that worked and failed. And but yeah, if you put in the effort, you can find a lot of stuff about what we are doing and how things work. And of course, really the goal is to gradually, I guess CIPHER is part of that, to sort of create a community of data users. People have an interest in this. And partly we do this also because we want people to collect data also. So we tend to think of the UAS as a platform that hopefully is useful, not just for us, but for anyone who wants to collect data or who wants to use data. So that's, and I said this yesterday, clearly people with their own funding can use the UAS and collect more data. They can link it to everything we have. And then there is the infamous 100,000 minutes that I talked about. So now we started this if you like, competition where people can propose modules that particularly should address the two main themes of what UAS is about. So one is that innovation of any sort is always welcome, because I think we all want to learn. I think that's also the nature of CIPHER in some ways. And the other one is, since the theme is really health disparities, inequality, so if people have new ideas about eliciting questions about that's relevant for health inequality or health disparities, then I think these certainly get preference if people submit a proposal. There's nothing, so we have had a conversation about it. There's nothing here that says, you can only do 3 questions or only 2,000 people. But of course, there is an implicit budget constraint in the sense that the more questions you want, the more expensive it becomes, because it eats up a bigger chunk of the 100,000 minutes. So there is a trade-off. But if you didn't want to commit a priori, because you just want to see, what's coming up and what will work. So, but I would imagine that if people propose something, that at some point this may lead to a conversation where we say, well, this is great, but can you make do with 2,000, or can you make do with a somewhat shorter question? I mean, but I think it's better to do it that way than having rules ahead of the time. So that's pretty much it. And of course, the goals for the day are sort of obvious. We hope to help you get more familiar with the data. Of course, learn some more of the opportunities for data use and for data collection. There certainly also will be a presentation about how it's easy to collect new data in the UAS. And also more generally to navigate the complexity of the data. We try to keep it simple, but of course at the end of the day it isn't. Right? So that's sort of why we do things like this. And of course we really want to learn from you, what you think can be done better, what you think we're not doing very well, etc. That's really it.